Hey guys, it's Ken. So I want to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Up until a couple weeks ago, I had never read any of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga. I had never really been quite interested, right? And as a kid, I'm going to focus on the manga here, but we'll get to that. As a kid, we all watched the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, right? It aired on Kids WB for like 4 fucking years in the early 2000s. And then I don't remember where they moved it to, but this was the same channel that did the Pokemon anime. I think they got that from 4Kids. And of course, like, you would be watching Animaniacs or, some weird shit like a Batman show. And suddenly Pokemon would come on or Yu-Gi-Oh! Would come on. And of course, everybody saw it, right? It's 2003. What are kids doing if not sitting inside watching TV?
What do you need them for?
To smoke a bogey. What do you think?
Man, get out of here. You kids are too young to smoke. What are you doing?
Oh my god! Ah!
This was, of course, a craze. I mean, we all remember it. But what always stood out to me, and what I've been talking about with people lately, is that the anime made zero fucking sense. Like, to us, it wasn't an anime back in the day. It was just a cartoon. We didn't understand what anime meant. I wouldn't understand what anime meant until a couple years later when I would be watching Adult Swim in, very low volume at 2 a.m. and suddenly Bleach would come on. And that's when the distinction between an anime like Yu-Gi-Oh! And an anime like Bleach, or One Piece or Naruto or whatever you want to talk about, when that distinction popped up, but also the similarities. Because these things are fairly similar. And the issue with Yu-Gi-Oh! As kids is that we didn't understand the show, and we definitely did not understand the card game, right? The card game, as presented both in the show, in the manga, as well as in the rule book, made zero fucking sense to us. We kind of played Yu-Gi-Oh! The same way we played Pokemon, and we played like the top duel kind of cards, where you kind of just put out cool cards and made up the story as you went along, right? Which I think, compared to the anime especially, is exactly what kids do. We didn't understand the rules because we didn't really care about them. Like, they weren't simple enough for us to just pick up. We made our own situations, right? It's like any game kids play. You just kind of go out and you make up rules as you go along to make things interesting. And they're not always fair, but they are a game. And you play it and you hate it and you love it and you move on because you're, 5, 6, 7 years old. Playing Yu-Gi-Oh! All we knew really was, Blue Eyes White Dragon, Exodia, Dark Magician, right? All the big cards Yugi used. And I compare that to Pokemon for a moment because Pokemon was much broader. It was very easy to see a Pokemon and understand it, even if you didn't quite know how to use the cards correctly. But when you see a Yu-Gi-Oh! Episode, he might only use 3 or 4 monsters. Not to say that 100 Pokemon show up in every episode, but it's a lot harder to memorize different cards that appear, different creatures that appear, than it is the Pokemon, right? And I don't think I played a real Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. There were probably some Flash games, but I don't think I played a real Yu-Gi-Oh! Game until I was maybe 10 years old. And at that point, Yu-Gi-Oh! Was falling off, in my area of America at least. So, back to the anime. It didn't make any fucking sense, right? And the big problem here is the core of this and the following rants, which is that they skip over practically everything in the first 59 issues, except for Kaiba taking Blue Eyes, and beating Grandpa, and then the duel. And their whole point here was to give you the minimum required backstory in 20 minutes for you to understand Duelist. And then they slow down a lot for Duelist Kingdom. And when I think back to the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, what I really remember is that picture of Yugi's face as he top decks Exodia and Kaiba just gets blasted away by it. I definitely watched more episodes. I remember talking about episodes as they aired, really early in my life. I can't think of any of them. I can think of later, GX episodes, but those definitely were not popular. By that point, we were on to other things.
You're a third-rate duelist with a fourth-rate deck.
Let's start with the first chapter, okay? It starts off, and you're immediately introduced to Yugi. And it works so well. Because Yugi is shown as this, clear kid. And you don't quite know how old he's supposed to be. But he's playing with this weird, knife in a barrel game that I guess pops something out of it. They don't explain this one because he immediately moves on to the Millennium Puzzle. And the Millennium Puzzle is in this giant gold box. Because, of course, when you look at the Millennium Puzzle after it's been assembled, it's pretty fucking big, it's not a normal necklace anybody would wear. It's the sort of thing that if you saw some kid walking around with this giant gold pyramid around his neck, you'd question what was going on, and maybe your sanity. So he appears with this gold box with the Egyptian eye on it and a bunch of hieroglyphs, and he's talking about, this box is my greatest and most secret treasure. It has a riddle. This treasure can be seen, but you haven't seen it. What could that mean? This is where we get introduced to Janucci and Honda, or Joey and Tristan, which are terrible fucking names. I'm not Japanese, but Janucci and Honda are just way better. All right, I can give you some leniency on Joey, but Tristan, come on. Who's named Tristan? What kind of fucking loser? And they steal the box with the Millennium Puzzle in it. And Janucci is so fucking mean to Yugi. If you read the colored version, all his text boxes are in, a deep red color. And I love that because he's clearly, an angry dude. And as we find out more about him later, this makes a lot of sense. But he starts out as just the generic bully, right? And Honda is a bit less of a bully man, but he's more one of those people that sort of follows a leader, and Janucci is his leader. What I love about this as we move through into Duelist is that Honda does get a bit more of his own sort of personality to him, but he still has that following Janucci feel, even as Janucci gets that following Yugi feel to him. And so I like seeing that go forward. They take the box, and they try and toy with Yugi about it. And that's when Anzu shows up, who is Taya in the anime. She takes the box, gives it back to Yugi, and everything is cool, right? But, of course, we get a little horny moment from Yugi, which is great to see, because these sort of die off pretty quickly. There are not a whole lot of horny moments in the manga, so I'm really glad there was one on page 11, They discuss the Millennium Puzzle box. It's very clearly not put together at all, and I don't know if that means Yugi just sort of starts from scratch every time, or if this is just how he drew it, and maybe Yugi's gotten pieces together. Maybe it doesn't stay together at all before it's completed. But it seems like a very fragile thing, and the way they use it down the road really does not reflect that fragility. So they talk about it, they discuss Egypt. They talk about the wish being granted if you solve the Millennium Puzzle. Then the hall monitor bully guy shows up. He talks to Janucci and Honda about, why are you bullying somebody? And he sort of bullies them, sort of intimidates them. And then it's revealed that Janucci stole the centerpiece of the Millennium Puzzle. So to fuck with Yugi, he just throws it out the window into like the school pool, which is very fortunate that it wasn't a river. When I first read it, I thought it was a river, and I was like, oh, well, it's gone forever. Rivers, they tend to move fast, or like a stream at least, but it's a pool. The school monitor, Ushio, he he sort of like tries to convince Yugi to let him beat up Honda and Janucci, and this is all an extortion scheme to get Yugi to pay him, and also be able to beat up Honda and Janucci. It's a double win for him. Now we have no idea who this person is, of course, and he's never mentioned again, at least as far as I've read. So he's only here to show off the original Shadow game, which actually shows up on the cover of one of the early pages. It's like the first page you see. But so after school, they go to Yugi's house at the game shop.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Why would he have to tell her this if she's been to the game shop? Explain it to me. Make it make sense. I know why he tells us. Why does he tell her? And Yugi has told Anzu that it is a keepsake of his grandpa, and it's like the only thing he has to remember him by. And so when they get to the shop, Yugi says hi to grandpa, and Anzu gets all scared. And I love this because there's no clear designation of when Yugi and Anzu started getting close to each other. Because when she saves the box from Honda and Janucci, it seems like she knows him already. It's a little weird that the only parent figure around most of the time is never been mentioned to her. It's like, oh, do you live with your parents, Yugi? No, I live in a game store with my grandpa. Small things, right? Anyway, they go to the game shop. They talk about, how sexy Anzu's getting. They go up to the room to make the Millennium Puzzle, and Grandpa kind of insults Yugi. Grandpa clearly knows a lot more about the Millennium Puzzle than you'd think anyone would, right? He's recounting when he watched a bunch of people die. But then he tries to take it back so he can sell it, which I think is just like a playful game. And I love this interaction between them, because at no point in the future do they really interact this way anymore. Like when you get to Duelist and he's just in the video camera, it's like he just appears in this clearly old man looking outfit on the screen, giving him helpful advice. But back here, he's like the fun, friendly, slightly creepy old man who is guiding Yugi through life. And so at some point, Anzu leaves. It's not clear when. Yugi's working on the Millennium Puzzle, and he falls asleep. Next day, Ushio beats up Honda and Janucci and tries to get the money from Yugi. And he's like, in exchange for paying me, you can beat them up too. He's like, no, they're my friends. You can't beat up my friends. And then he tries to, push forward on the extortion. And Yugi defends him, and he gets beat up by Ushio for it. And that sort of convinces Janucci that maybe Yugi's not a bad guy. Why have we been bullying him like that? And Yugi explains his wish he made on the Millennium Puzzle, which of course he has not finished. So I don't know why he would have that wish. But he says that he wishes for friends, because all he wants is friends to play, games with. Yugi drags himself home. He's working on the puzzle, trying to figure out what he's going to do. He has no money. He's got $10, dude. If that even. And, he needs to get 10 grand or some shit. And he finally gets it together and realizes he's missing the final piece. And so he freaks out, right? He'll never get friends because he can't finish the puzzle. And Grandpa comes in, he's talking to Dude, and he reveals that somebody came by and gave him the piece. And it's a little unclear from the presentation here. You know, he explains that Janucci came by. He doesn't say who it was. And we learn that Janucci's all wet because he dove into the pool to get the piece back. Luckily, it wasn't sucked up by the cleaning or anything. Grandpa does not tell him it was Janucci, but he does understand the extortion. So he puts the 200,000 yen in his bag, and Yugi finishes the Millennium Puzzle. How wacky, right? And then we get this giantly tall panel talking about Grandpa's inner thoughts on the Millennium Puzzle. And then we get this amazingly simplistic use of like 3 circles to communicate the transfer from the puzzle to Yugi. Suddenly it's nighttime. We don't know who's talking in this panel here. Ushio says Yugi called him out. How strange. Yugi does not quite look older and taller, but his hair is definitely more spiky. And they sit down, he looks all mean, and they play this game where they have to stab a knife through the money, and whatever they stab through, they can take. Now, I don't know where Yugi got the extra 200,000 yen here. Somehow. Maybe he stole it from Grandpa, knowing that he could get it back with him. So they play the game. Ushio loses control of his hand and is going to stab through his left hand. So to stop that, he decides to stab Yugi, which breaks the rules of the game, meaning he forfeits, and Yugi punishes him to a penalty game where he believes that leaves and garbage are money, and he's just laying around on the floor when school starts the next day, and Yugi has no idea what's happening. And that is the first issue. None of this is actually in the anime, okay? If you go watch the anime, episode 1, right now, you will have like a 2.5, maybe 3 minute section where they speed through like everything up to Kaiba. And really it focuses on Egypt, the Millennium Puzzle, Yugi solved it. Now there are shadow games. I don't know how to describe it. It is terrible. It is awful. And it makes no sense. And everyone I talk to, when they remember the Yu-Gi-Oh anime, they remember that first episode. They remember top decking Exodia, Kaiba getting blasted away, Grandpa lying on the floor, Mokuba's there for some reason. And they remember it making no sense. Okay? Now, I have really been enjoying the manga. I'm about 150 issues in. And I did not even plan on watching the anime because I didn't remember it being good. And so I was just going to read. But then I was researching and I realized that all I could remember was episode number 1. So I wanted to watch it again. And it just confirmed to me that somebody out there knew exactly what they were doing, which was selling cards. I consider this a fairly terrible anime episode, and yet it is 100% perfect for getting children to buy Yu-Gi-Oh cards. They won't know how to play them. They won't know what the fuck they do or what any of the things on them represent, but they will buy them. And so when you compare issue number 1 to episode number 1, issue number 1 is fairly straightforward. It's not super clear on all aspects, but, you know, they do explain more later. In the anime, nothing gets explained. Things just happen so that we can get to Duelist Kingdom and we can sell more cards. Okay, that's the whole point. And so I have much more to rant about, but I needed to get my thoughts out on this shitty fucking episode so that we can move on. Goodbye.
Adios, cowboy.
Need me a fucking thick ass pregnant brown bitch. I don't mean that like a weird way.